The restaurant became silent the moment the black luxury SUV stopped outside. Every waitress glanced toward the entrance, then quietly stepped back as a little girl walked in alone, dressed in an elegant blue coat, her eyes searching every face with heartbreaking hope instead of pride. Everyone knew who she was. She was the billionaire's daughter, the child whose father owned half the city. Rumors said she was rude, impossible to please, and whoever served her never returned to the restaurant. But beneath those frightened whispers was another truth nobody understood. The child wasn't looking for perfect service. She was desperately waiting for someone to call her by the name only one person in the world had ever used. That afternoon, while every waitress avoided her table, one ordinary waitress noticed the loneliness hidden behind the expensive clothes, and a forgotten secret began changing every life in the room. Before we continue, if you believe kindness can change someone's destiny and that every person deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, share it with your friends, comment where you're watching from, and subscribe to the Everkind Story for more emotional stories that restore faith in humanity. Emma had worked as a waitress for nearly 8 years. She was 28 years old, lived in a tiny apartment, and spent every day trying to support her elderly grandmother whose health had slowly declined over the years. Life had never been generous to Emma. She had lost her parents in a tragic accident when she was a teenager, and every dream she once carried had been replaced by responsibility. Yet she never allowed hardship to steal her kindness. She remembered names, favorite meals, birthdays, and little details about customers because she believed everyone wanted to feel seen. The restaurant manager often joked that Emma could recognize a person's sadness before they even opened the menu. Perhaps that was why, unlike everyone else, she didn't see a billionaire's daughter entering the restaurant. She simply saw a frightened little girl pretending to be brave. The child quietly sat near the window where sunlight reflected softly across untouched glasses. Other waitresses suddenly found reasons to become busy elsewhere. Some disappeared into the kitchen. Others pretended to clean empty tables. Emma noticed the uncomfortable silence spreading through the restaurant and asked another server what was happening. She learned about the endless rumors surrounding the girl. People claimed that every employee who served her was somehow fired after mysterious complaints reached her billionaire father. No one wanted to take the risk. Emma listened without judgment. She had spent enough years watching people suffer because of gossip to know that stories often traveled much faster than truth. As Emma approached the lonely table, she noticed something unexpected. The little girl's hands trembled slightly as she unfolded the menu. Her eyes weren't arrogant or demanding. They looked exhausted, almost frightened, as though disappointment had become something she expected from every stranger. Emma gently placed a glass of water before her and smiled with the same warmth she offered every customer. The child barely looked up. She simply whispered that she wasn't very hungry. Emma noticed a tiny silver bracelet hanging from the girl's wrist. Attached to it was a delicate charm engraved with a flower and one unusual word. It wasn't the girl's official name everyone knew from magazines. It was Sunny. Emma froze for a brief second. Years earlier, while volunteering at a children's hospital with her mother, she had met a kind young woman named Isabella who constantly talked about the daughter she lovingly called Sunny because she had brightened every dark moment in her life. Emma suddenly remembered that Isabella had married billionaire businessman Jonathan Carter shortly before leaving the city. News reports later announced Isabella's unexpected death after a serious illness. Emma looked again at the bracelet, then gently thanked the child by saying, "You're welcome, Sunny," after placing her meal on the table. The little girl's face changed instantly. Her eyes widened with disbelief. Tears gathered before she could stop them. Nobody had spoken that name aloud in years. After her mother passed away, everyone insisted on using her formal name, Amelia Carter. Her father had buried himself in work, believing that hearing the nickname would only deepen their pain. Gradually the beautiful little name disappeared from daily life until it existed only inside Amelia's memories. Every restaurant visit, every public appearance, every expensive gift only reminded her that nobody remembered the happiest version of herself anymore. Hearing Sunny again felt like hearing her mother's voice reaching across time. Emma didn't ask questions. She simply continued treating the child like any ordinary little girl. She brought warm soup instead of the expensive steak because she noticed Amelia seemed tired rather than hungry. She folded a paper flower from a napkin while waiting for dessert. She even laughed softly when the child accidentally spilled juice across the tablecloth instead of making her feel embarrassed. For the first time in years, Amelia smiled without forcing it. Staff members watched from a distance, confused by the peaceful scene unfolding before them. Far across the street, inside a sleek office tower, Jonathan Carter was finishing another endless meeting when security informed him that hidden cameras inside the restaurant had recorded something unusual. His daughter was smiling. It had become such a rare sight that his security team immediately notified him. Jonathan rushed to the restaurant expecting another public relations disaster. Instead, he found his daughter laughing quietly while an ordinary waitress carefully showed her how to fold another paper flower. Jonathan stood frozen near the entrance. He hadn't seen that expression on Amelia's face since Isabella died. For years he believed money, therapists, schools, vacations, and expensive toys could eventually heal her broken heart. None of them worked because he had overlooked the one thing she needed most. She didn't need luxury. She needed someone to remember the love her mother left behind. When Amelia noticed her father, she ran toward him holding the small paper flower with tears streaming down her cheeks. She wrapped her arms around him and whispered that someone finally remembered her real name. Jonathan felt his own heart shatter. He suddenly realized that in trying to protect himself from grief, he had accidentally erased the last daily reminder of his wife from their daughter's life. The nickname Isabella had created out of endless love had disappeared because he could not bear hearing it himself. Jonathan quietly thanked Emma before asking how she had known. Emma explained the memory from years earlier at the children's hospital. She described Isabella's kindness, her stories about little Sunny, and how proudly she had spoken about becoming a mother. Jonathan lowered his head, overwhelmed by emotion. He understood that while he had hidden from painful memories, strangers had continued carrying pieces of Isabella's kindness within them. The following weeks transformed more lives than anyone expected. Jonathan began leaving work earlier to spend evenings with his daughter. He started calling her Sunny again, even when the word brought tears to his own eyes. Instead of filling silence with expensive gifts, he filled it with bedtime stories, family dinners, and long walks through city parks. Slowly, grief stopped feeling like an enemy and became a bridge connecting father and daughter to the woman they both loved. Emma expected nothing in return, but kindness has a remarkable way of finding its path back. Jonathan anonymously paid for Emma's grandmother's medical treatment after quietly learning about her struggles. He also created the Isabella Hope Foundation, inspired by his late wife's compassion and Emma's example. The foundation trained restaurant workers, hotel employees, teachers, and caregivers to recognize emotional loneliness hidden behind wealth, status, or appearance. Its message spread across the country. Every person carries an invisible story, and sometimes remembering one forgotten detail can save a broken heart. Months later, Emma visited the foundation's opening ceremony. She watched children laughing freely while volunteers welcomed every family with warmth rather than judgment. Nearby stood Jonathan and Sunny, holding hands. The little girl looked happier than any magazine photograph had ever captured. Around her wrist remained the same silver bracelet with the tiny engraved flower. Only this time, nobody was afraid to call her by the name that mattered most. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that kindness often begins with simply noticing another person's pain, please like this video, share it with someone you care about, subscribe to the Ever Kind Story, and help us spread more stories that inspire compassion across the world. Special request * before this story ends, please leave a comment and tell us one beautiful nickname or loving word someone once called you that you will never forget. Because sometimes the greatest treasures are not hidden in bank accounts, family fortunes, or grand achievements. Sometimes they are hidden inside a single word spoken with love. One forgotten name restored a little girl's smile, healed a grieving father's heart, changed an ordinary waitress's future, and reminded an entire community that genuine kindness is never measured by wealth. It is measured by the quiet moments when someone chooses to truly see another human being. And those moments, no matter how small they seem, have the power to echo through generations, proving that compassion is the richest inheritance anyone can ever leave behind.